much. Let's get into the Life of Spirit Study Bible. Get into Song of Solomon. I'm not going to break down, the book. I'm just going to get into the Word of God. Go directly into the Word of God. Let's get into chapter 1, verse 1 of Song of Songs. Verse 1 says, Solomon, Song of Songs. This is a book own title in the Hebrew text. It means the best or greatest song Solomon wrote. 1005 songs. Verse 5 it says, Dark am I, yet lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon. Now the tents of Kedar means tents were usually made of black oak hair. Kedar was an Arabian tribe descended from Ishmael. Thus some have suggested that the bride was an Arabian princess. In verse 6, do not stare at me because I am dark, because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me. It made me take care of the vineyards, my own vineyard I have neglected. Vineyards I have neglected means the cruel brothers of the beloved forced her to guard and care for their vineyards, something she had not done for her own. This outdoor work may be the reason her skin was dark, in a marked contrast to the sun-bonneted beauties of Jerusalem, though hard work had not destroyed her real beauty. In light of these verses, it is hard to see. Some suppose the speaker here was Pharaoh's daughter. The Solomite maiden was probably the princess Solomon first loved and married before he began to enter marriages for the sake of political alliances. Verse 9 says, I liken you. I liken you, my darling, to a mare harnessed to one of the chariots of Pharaoh. What it means is that your cheeks are beautiful with earrings, your neck with strings of jewels. We will make you earrings of gold, studded with silver. I kind of went past that. I'll read verse 9 already. Again to verse 9. My darling mare, that means the comparison to horses was considered a compliment in those days. My darling means in Hebrew, Re Thigh, means my companion in the sense of my friend. It was a term of endearment used before marriage. Okay, verse 11 says, we will make you earrings of gold studded with silver. Now, what that means is that in contrast to her humble shepherd's attire, she will be decorated with jewels, strings of golden beads with points of silver. While the king was at his table, my perfume spread its fragrance. This perfume is nard, an ointment from an aromatic Himalayan herb. My lover is to me a statue of myrrh, resting between my breasts. Statue of myrrh, that means myrrh is an aromatic rising from the bark of a balsam tree, found in Arabia and India. The bundle of myrrh was probably in a perfume bag. The Hebrew and the rest of the verse indicates that the myrrh, not the silver, would rest between her breasts. In other words, thoughts of him will be with her, refreshing her as myrrh would do. In verse 14, my lover is to me a cluster of henna blossoms from the vineyards of En-Gedi. Henna blossoms, that means the henna flowers produce an orange dye and have a pleasant fragrance. Verse 15 says, how beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes are doves. Your eyes are doves. It means the comparison seems to refer to innocence, because the sodomite does not use seductive glances to try to stir up base emotions. In chapter 2, verse 1 says, I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. I mean, the Shulamite maiden compares herself to simple wildflowers of the fields, for she is not accustomed to Jerusalem's luxuries. Sharon is the coastal plain just south of Mount Carmel. Thanks to the person that likes this video. If you're new to the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Chapter 2, verse 5, it says, strengthen me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. Strengthen me with raisins, refresh me with apples. In a weakened, love-sick condition, possibly involving disappointment, the beloved wants to be strengthened with raisins. Now, the person likes the video. That's what happens sometimes. You're going to, go in and out. Is what it is. Keep moving. Verse 7 says, Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field. Do not arouse or awaken love until its soul desires. Do not arouse or awaken love. This phrase occurs 3 times in Song of Songs. It is spoken about a beloved and refers to physical intimacy with her lover and her and her lover. She does not want any intimacy to occur to the situation appropriate until she, Solomon, are married. The Bible allows for sexual relations only between a husband and a wife. Verse 16 says, My lover is mine, I am his. He browses among the lilies. My lover is mine, I am his. That means love the two lovers have for each other is genuine and monogamous. There is no desire or room for any other person. In marriage, there must be such a love for commitment to each other that faithfulness to a spouse is of highest importance in our lives. Chapter 3, verse 1 through 4 says, All night long on my bed, I look for the one my heart loves. I look for him, but did not find him. I will get up now and go about the city. Through its streets and squares, I will search for the one my heart loves. So I looked for him, but did not find him. The watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. Have you seen the one my heart loves? Scarcely had I passed him when I found the one my heart loves. I held him and would not let him go till I had brought him to my mother's house, to the room of the one who conceived me. All night long I looked for him. That means that night is plural in the Hebrew. It means night after night. The Shulamite may have been dreaming night after night that she was dreaming, searching for a lover, but not finding him. In verse 6 it says, Who is this coming from the desert, like a column of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and incense, made from all the spices of the merchant? Who is this coming up? This is feminine. In the Hebrew, the verbs that follow refer to the bride's coming. In verse 11 says, Come out, you daughters of Zion, and look at King Solomon, wearing the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding, the day his heart rejoiced. Come out and look at Solomon, at King Solomon. Because of the intercession of Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, and the prophet Nathan, Solomon was brought out and publicly anointed king. It appears that when Solomon was anointed king, he was already married. He was wearing the crown with which his mother crowned him. In view also are the covenant promises given by God. Chapter 4, verse 7. All beautiful you are, my darling. There's no flaw in you. Beautiful you are, no flaw in you. Meaning everything about the Shulamite was beautiful and free from blemish. Flaw can also refer to moral blemishes, thus she is physically and morally pure. Verse 8 says, Come with me from Lebanon, my bride, come with me from Lebanon. Descend from the crest of Manna, from the top of Sinor, the summit of Hermon, from the lion's dens and the mountain haunts of the leopards. Amana, Sinir, Hermon. Amana is the name for a mountain in the anti-Lebanon mountain range. At the southern end are the peaks of Sinir and Mount Hermon, northeast of Galilee. Verse 9. You have stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. You have stolen my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. Stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. Sister here means beloved. Solomon's beloved bride has captured his heart. In verse 12 it says, You are a garden locked up, my sister, my bride. You are a spring enclosed, a sealed fountain. The garden locked up. The 3 figures of speech in this verse emphasize the fact that Shulamite had retained her virginity, was sexually pure on her wedding night. Virginity until marriage is God's standard, sexual standard of purity for all young people, male and female. To violate God's holy standard defiles one's spirit and conscience and cheapens the moment of marriage, consummation. So verse 14 says, nard and saffron, calamus, cinnamon, with every kind of incense tree, with myrrh and aloes, and all the fine spices. Saffron is a plant whose violet flowers yield a yellow dye, mixing it with olive oil made of fragrant ointment. In verse 14 it reads, Calamus aloes. Calamus is an aromatic spice. Aloes is an aromatic wood from Bangladesh and China. In verse 4 of chapter 5, it says, My lover thrust his hand through the latch opening. Latch opening. My heart began to pound for him. My heart began to pound. That means that the Hebrew Nia, here translated heart, can also be translated bowels. That means the belly, intestines, inner parts. The bowels were considered the seat of emotions, especially feeling of affection. The beloved entire body quivered when she thought of her lover. Verse 14, it says, His arms are rods of gold, set with chrysolite. His body is like a polished ivory decorated with sapphires. A sapphire is a semi-precious stone of rich azure blue. In chapter 5, verse 16, his mouth is a sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. This is my lover. This is my friend. O daughters of Jerusalem. Right, this altogether lovely. He's altogether lovely means everything about the bridegroom is precious, desirable, delightful. Alright, so I'm done. Deal with chapter 6 and 7 tomorrow. We're going to Isaiah. Let's see. Everybody on the live feed that much tonight. See what happens tomorrow. Things like this. All right, let's get into the Rickey Henderson book, chapter 9 of Rickey, the legend, life and legend of the American original. Chapter 9, Rickey Henderson. I've been in this book for a while. Skip around. Use some important parts of the chapter. I'm not going to read everything. I don't have to do all that. See what happens. But to get into it, Rickey's mind was clear. For the first time in years, money was not an issue when he reported for spring training. There will be no more arm wrestling with Eisenhart, Alderson about his worth, no question marks about whether the team he played for truly valued what he could do, no comparison with rivals or teammates. He was 26 and going into the prime of his career, mentally and physically. Rickey was comforted knowing that he would be compensated at a level that proved it. Not only that, but he would now be paid by the Yankees, the most successful, most famous team in North American professional sports, the team whose very name symbolized empire. Unlike the A's, Rickey believed the Yankees clearly wanted him. In January, for instance, Yankee Vice President Woody Woodward had watched the highlight reel of Rickey and remarked, "I've never seen a guy look so fast in slow motion." Rickey also had security on his terms. The Yankees set agreement to the trade had come with the contingency that Rickey signed a long-term deal, but Rickey was also received a coveted no trade clause. He couldn't just be dumped off to Cleveland without his consent. But Rickey preferred a long-term contract because he did not want to play in 1985, and the uncertainty of not knowing where he was playing in 1986. It was time to deal. Richie Bry went big, asking Steinbrenner for 7 years, $18.2 million. Steinbrenner barked. After the first day of negotiations, the two sides were $13 million apart. Papers made it sound as if the gluttonous Steinbrenner had targeted the biggest bauble of the offseason because he was George, who had to have the biggest of everything. But the fact that Steinbrenner didn't really want Rickey, without Sandy Olson's asking price. Asking price. The multiple players in the trade was already too high. So now Rickey wanted nearly $20 million. So the man who thought Rickey was indispensable for New York wasn't the boss. It was Billy. Billy Martin's fingerprints was all over the deal. He made it no secret about how much he valued Rickey. While Billy was secretly calling Rickey, telling him his destiny lay in New York, he was also telling George that Rickey needed to be in pinstripes. In his memoir, Billy Ball, Billy recalled George's reaction to the proposed deal at the Yankees organizational meeting in Tampa. "I'm not going to give up all these guys for Rickey Henderson." He jumped up and walked out of the meeting. "I had Rickey in Oakland, and I was in favor of making the deal. So were several of the other people in the room. But everybody was afraid to say anything. After George left, Clyde King, the general manager, turned to me. Billy King said, 'Can you talk to him?' Yeah, I said to him, 'I'll go to talk to him.' We were meeting in George's hotel in Tampa, Bay Area Harbor Inn. He had a suite there, and I went up, knocked on the door before I could even say anything. I hear George's voice say, 'Come in, Billy.' 'How did you know it was me?' 'I knew you'd be coming up here,' he said. 'Look, George,' I said, 'you have to make this deal. I know you're giving up Jay Howe and three young pitchers, but young pitchers are a dime a dozen. Dime a dozen. You can replace them. They come along all the time. Rickey Henderson comes along once in a lifetime. Believe me, if you get Rickey Henderson, he's going to make a difference in this whole ball club. He'll make Billy Randolph better. He'll make Don Mattingly better. He'll make Dave Winfield better. He'll help everybody. Please, George, if I'm wrong, then fire me. I feel that strongly about this trade. I know this kid well. Well, if that's the way you feel," he said, "I'll do it." Okay, I called them down there and tell them to make the deal. The deal wasn't a week old before the papers began speculating that Rickey was the key, not just for the top of the Yankee lineup, but for Billy getting his old job back for the fourth time. Dave Anderson at the Times, for example, leaving Martin's dual motive. George had fired Billy in 1983 after the Yankees won 91 games, but not the division, replaced him with Yogi Berra, who then won 87. Not that it mattered. Nobody was beating Sparky's 84 Tigers because who famously started the season 35-5. That was a wrap. George impatient. The Yankees entered 1985 having not made the playoffs since 1981. And Billy staking George's money by vouching for Rickey. Having Billy back in the dugout felt like a bad road trip away. Nobody knew Rickey better than Billy. The fact that Billy would repeat more than once in the company of Steinbrenner, stoking the speculation. No manager in the big leagues believed in Rickey. like Billy did. In turn, Rickey performed it for Billy, like he did for no one else. So when the deal was announced, the New York writers saw Rickey as a spark plug, top of the order book guy, who slapped the ball around, set the table, and ran fast. He was dangerous, certainly, but dangerous for a leadoff hitter. A year earlier, while making the case for his 1.2 million arbitration request, Rickey had viewed himself as Billy did as a transcendent franchise-lifting talent, a guy who could change the course of a game, not just to start the game, but in every inning. When Rickey arrived in New York, however, the writers compared him to Mickey Rivers, Mick the Quick. Rickey and Mickey Rivers were both seen in the baseball as characters, as entertainers. That was not always a compliment. Rivers was an exciting, often above average player. He was also the class clown, though an important player. He couldn't always be taken seriously for good reason. Led the league in triples in 1974 and in triples in stolen base in 1975, but he was equally known for his malapropisms. Like the time he said his season goals were to hit 300, score 100 runs, and stay injury prone. Reggie Jackson once told Rivers he couldn't spell cat if he had spotted the C and the T. Rivers once said of Reginald Martinez Jackson, "You got a white first name, a Mexican middle name, and a black last name. Man, you don't know who blank you are." In 1976, Rivers finished 303rd in the MVP voting when he hit 312. He had 184 of his. Led the Yankees to their first pennant since 1964, but the award went to teammate, Yankees' very serious leader, catcher Thurman Munson. Were there similarities between Rickey and Mickey? Well, only in that they played at the top of the order. Their names rhyme, and the styles of the sporting press, they seem to fit a particularly black stereotype. Aloof, amusing, but not particularly bright. In fact, amusing because they weren't seen as particularly bright. It was true that Rickey did some bizarre things, but that didn't mean he was dumb. The people close to him would just shrug, dismiss Rickey's ways by saying Rickey's on his own program, which would eventually be condensed into his universal shorthand, Rickey being Rickey. In Oakland, the story persisted that only early in his career, Rickey framed one of his massive paychecks and pinned it right up on his wall without cashing it first. The story felt apocryphal, an ingredient seamlessly blended into the mythical gumbo of Rickey's life. But Rickey's stories that were too good to be true were also too good to dismiss, too good to forget. Even if they would never happen, they could have happened. The check story was true. However, and Rickey eventually cashed the check only because Alderson received a phone call from a panicked bean counter in the Augusta County office to tell him that the club's books were off by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Eventually, the bookkeepers uncovered the discrepancy. A game check issued to Rickey had gone uncashed. Fred Atkins remembered the story too. I asked him, "Did you lose it? Did you cash it?" And he said, "Nah, it's on the wall." There was something that's once adorable and triumphant about a kid from North Oakland being so proud of how now being rich that he framed the check, a symbol that he had succeeded the American way. Like the barkeep tacking that first dollars earned in his new tavern on the wall next to the cash register. That was the cute story. The real story, or at least another part of it, was that Rickey Henderson did not easily part with his money. Not cashing the check was a way to show financial discipline, to stretch out a dollar. Rickey hadn't cashed the check. It went void for 90 days. The front office called saying Rickey has a check. He has a cash that's going to be voided. See, Rickey saved money by not cashing his checks. And his real meal money, Rickey saved that too. That blank would eat McDonald's. I used to tell him, "McDonald's? They ain't no kind of fuel. Might as well eat a hot dog before the game. If I'm lying, I'm flying." It was true. Rickey wouldn't spend his meal money either. Murphy money, it was called in baseball, after Boston lawyer Robert Murphy scored a per diem from the parsimonious owners while trying to unionize the players back in the 1940s. Rickey would take the cash and put it in a shoebox, wrapping each per diem in an elastic band. Over his career, his meal money would range from $60 to $100 per day. The shoebox would fill with dozens of individually wrapped rolls of cash, thousands of dollars in total. Whenever Rickey returned to North Oakland, he'd interrogate the kids from the old neighborhood, then open the shoebox and toss the roll to the ones who were keeping their grades up. It wasn't that the Yankees were purposely trying to insult Rickey with the comparisons to Rivers. You just had to understand their history. They were, after all, the Bronx Bombers. They weren't the 82 Cardinals, those AstroTurf jackrabbits turning 12 hoppers into 2-run doubles. The New York Yankees made their money by hitting the ball over the fence. The 1984 Yankees stole 62 bases that year, Rickey running far less after feeling insulted by Burroughs in arbitration. Still stole more bases all by himself, 6 than the whole Yankees team. The Yankees' single-season stolen base record of 74 was set in 1914 by a forgotten third baseman named Fritz Mazel. That was the dead ball era, when the foot baseball felt like a paperweight. The top 3 stolen base totals in Yankee history were Mazel's, that races Ben Chapman's 61, 1931, 55 that snuffy Sternweiss swiped in the year of 1944. Numbers Rickey could put up before breakfast. But when Joe Morgan retired at the end of the 1984 season, Rickey had just 25, had 493 stolen bases, already more than any other active player. Lee Randolph could run, but Rickey Rivers was the last pure base stealer on the Yankees roster. Rivers could ignite a club, but he was no Rickey. Rivers would be done by the end of the 1984 season. Have stolen 267 bases in 15 big league seasons. Rickey had 493 and 5.5. Rivers never struck out, but he also never walked. He finished with a career on-base percentage of .327. Entering his first season, the Yankees' Rickey's on-base percentage was .400. Rivers had never hit more than 12 home runs in the season. Rickey, stunned by Wilson's emphasis in arbitration that he didn't select enough, hit 16 in 1984. It wasn't as if Rickey was sneaking up on the Yankees. Several wise baseball people were already calling him at 26 the best leadoff hitter in the game, maybe in history. One of those people was Billy. Nor was Rickey a class clown who reveled in what he did not know. He was a ferociously competitive, goal-driven athlete. It never failed to upset his best friend, Fred Atkins, to see Rickey characterized as unintelligent just because he struggled with words. Rickey was generally funny, even when he didn't mean to be. At the time, he explained to the writers that living in his Hoboken apartment gave him a panoramic view of the New York skyline. From my window, I could see the entire state building. The press wanted to have it both ways with Rickey. They wanted him to cultivate and trust them while they simultaneously mocked him. Perhaps one of the great signs of Rickey's intelligence, Fred Atkins thought, was refusing to engage with the writers except on his own terms. He was onto them. People who don't know Rickey hear him speak and they think he's stupid. He's probably the most street-smart athlete ever been around. When we first signed him at Mizuno, Rickey negotiated my butt off. He knew what he wanted and how much it would take to get him. But he also knew how much he was needed, and that we needed him more than he needed us, because he had a cutoff point and I didn't. So I would eventually be the one to say yes. He taught me the art of negotiation one way, by tearing me apart. Rickey got his money, but Rickey also provided in the Bronx the growing reputation of a guy who played when he wanted to. His own program was shorthand for Rickey isn't a team guy. The players knew it when they were on the field for pre-game stretch, and Rickey wasn't. Kit Steyer had written about Rickey this way, as did Peter Gammons, and now when Maury Chaz of the Times introduced Rickey to the New York market, he foreshadowed just how devastating a player Rickey could be when he took over a game, but also why his relationships in Oakland were so frayed. The A's knew they were in for some lean rebuilding years, but they also didn't seem too broken up about their best player leaving town. Now that Rickey was an opponent, the former teammates didn't have to hold back. They knew Rickey was different. But in 1984 represented a breach in several relationships, and his teammates made it clear that they were so upset at how he acted out in response to not getting as big as a raise as he wanted. They were unanimous in regard to his gifts. There was never any debate about that. But at some point, at some level, he had also lost a bit of their professional regard. If Rickey wants to put on a show in Yankee Stadium, he will, Clete Boyer, one of Billy's old coaches and the former great Yankee third baseman, told Dave Anderson of the New York Times. But in Oakland, he didn't always work at it. Ron Fernwright, the San Francisco writer who was a fixture at Sports Illustrated, wrote of Rickey Henderson, for all of his flair, underwent a sort of personality change for the worse last year, offending even his own teams with his uncooperative attitude. When the featured writers profiled Rickey, the new Yankee, traveled to Arizona to the A's spring training camp, they found that his teammates still felt singed from being the collateral damage of Rickey's fight with the A's over money. In Oakland, Henderson developed a reputation for coming to the park not always wanting to play. Not that he was out the door. The catcher Mike Heath let Rickey have it. I don't want to play with a guy who shows up late, doesn't take batting practice, doesn't want to play a day game after a night game. You know what I mean? It was no illusion that something had in fact changed with Rickey. He always had a desire to be set apart, to be considered one of the best in the game, to be paid like it. He had succeeded in achieving that. But Rickey had also shown his hand during 1984, upset with Burroughs and unhappy about his money. He was willing to withhold his best. His teammates had witnessed his unwillingness to participate in the parts of the job that came with the territory on both good days and bad. Jim Darby had already seen that side of Rickey as the merchandise rep at Muzingo. He was a team player, except when he wasn't. And that's how he was with us. You have a contract and a relationship, but the contract wasn't exactly binding with Rickey. You never knew if he was going to screw you, if he was upset with something. It was a paradox. That was what also made him kind of cool. Rickey was now being paid the way the home run hitters were paid. He also had his no trades clause, critical layer of control that the big boys like Winfield and Reggie and Gary Carter had. He had lusted to be seen as a player he envisioned for himself. And now that he achieved that status, he will be vocal about it. I think I'm a great ball player, Rickey told the South Florida Sun Sentinel. But what I did in Oakland is separate from coming to New York. Rickey was also signaling that he no longer saw himself as a rising talent or prodigy, but as an established star unleashed. Then I was trying to prove I could play in the big leagues. I don't have to prove anything now, he told Newsday columnist Steve Jacobson. People know what Rickey Henderson can do. He was also going to take ownership of the flamboyant persona he had established, which was authentic and our creation. If the paper was going to call Rickey a hot dog, he was going to let everyone know that he always belonged on a marquee. A disciple of Mays, a protege of Brock, Henderson admits that there's as much a showboat as there is ball player in him, that he's paid to entertain as well as perform. Now instead of stealing bases for lunch money, he's stealing them for millions. People say I'm a showman because of the style I play. I like to make the people happy. I like to give them their money's worth. Rickey had let them know he was a star, but now the combination of his marquee level style and his potential to go dark when he didn't get what he wanted created a certain toxicity. He now had a reputation through which his every move and action injury would be filtered. For all the talk about Rickey's disruptions on the backspabs and the numbers he had put up, just enough through age 25, there was some skepticism on the part of the baseball people about his greatness as a player. Sandy Alston articulated it when he considered Rickey's time in Oakland before making the deal. The coaches, players, managers, executives there were all rooted in baseball culture and fixated on how the game is supposed to be played. So they tended to view Rickey with a certain qualification, constantly attaching them dreaded, but to his game. For example, he could change the game from the first at bat, but he took too many days off. Skip around a little bit. Rickey took the number 24 Blues number, still the most famous 24 in all of New York sports history, the 24 of stickball in Harlem and a catch at the Polo Grounds to a generation from whom he will always be the greatest ball player of them all. He immediately told the writers, I didn't take 24 from Mays. He explained that the number he wanted, his number 35, was already taken by the ancient knuckleballer Phil Necro. So he reverted back to number 24. Also, it says in the chapter that Rickey actually had a problem with the Yankees uniform because the A's uniform was a pullover top and baseball pants with an elastic waistband. The Yankees uniform buttoned down the front. The pants was not elasticized at the waist and instead required an actual belt. Rickey was wary of both the buttons and the belt because of his head first slide. The buttons would be uncomfortable when they met the infield dirt. The buckle on the Yankee uniform belt, remembering how he gashed his abdomen on his belt, and Double-A was a laceration waiting to happen. But in his last year in Oakland, Rickey had talked about return to the feet first slide, and now the Yankees uniform pushed him even further in that direction. Rickey had loved listening to Billy tell stories about the old days in New York and prophesied that Rickey would one day be in pinstripes. But when he arrived there, Rickey felt that the stuff about the magic and power of New York was for the fans of the papers. He did not appreciate the intense relationship between the team and the writers, between the writers and the city. And there were so many writers. If Rickey thought the Bay Area press corps was often too intrusive, mostly because Kit Steyer annoyed him, New York was an entirely different universe. It was like being packed in on a D train before a night game. 9 papers traveled with the team, outlets that didn't cover every home game. The writers, especially the big ones like Dick Young of the Daily News, made clear to the players that they could make or break a guy in the eyes of the fans. The papers expect the players to bask in the New York mythology the way they did, to show a top deference to the most dominant team, which played in the greatest city in the world. The Tabloid Post and Daily News, Newsday out in Long Island, and the 2 North Jersey papers, the Star Ledger and the Record, the Hartford Courant in Connecticut. All these newspapers travel every day with the Yankees. As to do it to the rabid Yankee fans. New York papers were critical to the dynamic unlike any other in city in baseball. There was one other thing about Rickey that threw the Braves off for all the style on the field. Rickey wasn't Reggie, who can give as much as a guy who was quick and glib with a quote, who reveled in being seen around the city, reminded everybody that his IQ was under 60. For Reggie, sparring with the Braves was sport, but he also understood that in New York, his relationship with them was necessary. It's a long chapter. Get chapter 10. Skip around a little bit. Like the Yankees was stacked going into 1985. The great Yuri Rivera was the manager. His lineup was fearsome. There was the big man, Dave Winfield, in the middle of the lineup, the fearless one, former MVP Don Baylor, consummate pro, outfielder King Griffey, who had already won championships with the Cincinnati's famed Big Red Machine. There was the mainstay Willie Randolph, who went back to the glory days of 1977, 1978, when the Yankees were champions. And finally, the homegrown kid out of Evansville, Indiana, 19th round pick, Don Mattingly, who had his breakout year in 1984, leading the league in doubles, 44, with hits 207 and hitting 343, and beating out Winfield for the batting crown on the final day of the season. It had been an amazing race between teammates that Steinbrenner ruined by pitting his 2 stars, one white, one black, against each other. Modern day Mano Maris competition, the side over racism. There was another thing about Mattingly that made him DiMaggio level. He never struck out. Take 1984, 23 homers, 110 batting in, 33 strikeouts. New York loved him. He's been in town 20 minutes and already had a nickname, Donnie Baseball. He'd been in the big leagues for 2 full seasons. Steinbrenner was already calling him a Hall of Famer. Adding Rickey to an offense that was 4th in the league was going to be lethal. Which is not to say that there was no anger, arbitration, or insult. When Mattingly won the batting title, the first Yankee to do so since Mickey Mantle was stripped on the ground year of 1957, from 1956, it received virtually no raise from Steinbrenner. After 207 hits in one season, Malley said he felt disrespected. A year earlier, Rickey had wanted to be $1 million guy, and now in 1985, 7 other players filed for arbitration, seeking $1 million, one of whom was his opposite number in the National League. Tim Raines, players were voicing their opinions ever louder that their free agent markets should have been more bountiful than they were. On the field, though, the Yankees were going to be formidable. Rickey Henderson, Willie Randolph, and Don Manley were going to get on base 750 to 800 times in front of Dave Winfield and the big boys. The only team I've seen comparable in terms of the lineup were our 76 Reds. With Joe Morgan, Ken Griffey, Pete Rose. Randolph will have a great year. The Yankees hadn't played a single inning in 1985, and Anderson was already comparing their lineup to his legends. Henderson will do that for him. Then they'll make life like a shooting gallery for opposing pitchers. What we don't know about is their starting pitching. Up in Toronto, Pat Gillick, his Blue Jays ancient closer to becoming a great team, understood what the acquisition of Rickey meant to the Yankees, but he also knew that the Rickey deal had made it possible for Oakland to let closer Bill Cardell go to Toronto, which lacked a finisher. The deficiency was in the bullpen. With Cardell, we could be in a pretty good shape. The Yankees had a good offense. Now they had an awesome offense, but you have to question how far their pitching will take them. The AL East, the Tigers were the defending champs. The Blue Jays had been in the big leagues only 7 years since expansion to Toronto and Seattle. Leave that they were champions ready. Meanwhile, in Boston, everybody was talking about 22-year-old horse Roger Clemens, but the Yankees had Rickey and Winfield and Manley, the great Guidry, the other guys linked to the championship days. I'm going to start right here. Just continue on to be continued tomorrow. So I'm going to start in spring training. So we're going to continue on with chapter 9 tomorrow. So until then, talk to you soon. I'll be in Song of Solomon, chapter 6, 7, 8. Do chapter 9, continue on chapter 9, try to finish that tomorrow. Continue with that. And do Football Friday with Rashad Mitchell. Until then, talk to you tomorrow.